Welcome. It's 4:45 on the 1st of June, 2020. Part of the world's burning. We're all hanging out, hopefully having a drink and seeing what we can do about maybe forgetting a little bit an hour, just to see what we can do. The program is, my name is Wes Hagen. I am the winemaker for J.Wilkes Wines here in Santa Maria, California. And the show is Day Drinking with Wes Hagen, and we've been doing this since mid-March. And we get together, and John and Zinman, welcome. I hope you guys are all well and safe where you are. And Travis, thank you so much for coming in. We've got a number of folks already in and jumping in on the live stream. That's awesome. I do not see the live stream appearing on my J.Wilkes Wines Santa Barbara page where I'm going. I'm assuming it's there because every time I do this exact same thing happens. Kai, what's up? Oh, please tell Wolfgang hello, man. I think of him so often and kindly. So he was always so nice to me. So thanks. And Michelle and Jim, happy Monday to you. I don't know if it's a good Monday, but it's a Monday. So we'll definitely get through it and have some fun talking about Pinot Noir and wine vessels. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about keg wine, Pinot Noir. It started with this idea of wine vessels. So I wanted to put together. You are an empty vessel. You want to hear a joke? Okay, so four guys go out on a golf outing. Let's not be sexist. Four women. No, let's even go further. Four black women go out on a golf outing because there can be some awesome golfing there, right? They go out for a golf outing. Three of them hit the ball, smack it right down the middle. One of them hits it into the bushes. So the three go over and they're sipping their Bloody Marys and watching the fourth try to get out of the woods. So the woman looks and says, "Oh, I can get it onto the green if I just hit it just right." So she backs up and hits that ball as hard as she can, hits a tree, knocks her in the head, and unfortunately she dies. So she wakes up at the pearly gates and there's St. Peter looking down at her saying, "Not much of a golfer, are you?" She says, "Fuck you, I got here in two." It's a golf joke. It's not even a great golf joke. It's as much as I could do. So I hope you guys enjoyed my horrible, awful, tasteless golf joke. And Dawn, so glad to have you guys here. Michelle, it is a good Monday. Thank you for that. And Jim, thanks again for that too. Tommy, bubbly Monday. Sweet. You had a day off, Tommy. That's totally cool. I'm so glad that you did that. So very, very excited that everybody's here. We're going to be talking about Pinot Noir. We're going to be talking about keg wine. We're going to be talking about canned wine. We're going to be talking about the different types of vessels that we can ferment in, different types of vessels, basically from the grapes leaving the field until you basically pour something into your glass. And it is Day Drinking with Wes Hagen, so I'm really, really glad you're here, and I'm glad everyone is safe wherever you are. I certainly hope you are. I hope you're offering support to the people. We're not going to get very political tonight, but I am going to read a very short 2-paragraph statement from one of my favorite books about sort of the history of sort of equal rights and sort of where we are right now, because I think for anything we need a little perspective. And so the perspective I'm going to give is that we are in a process of becoming better as a nation, but we are definitely needing to do a better job. So I want to give us hope, but I don't want to give us false hope. I want to give us hope, but I don't want to make it seem like everything's okay, because everything's not okay. I think if anyone woke up this morning and said, "Oh, everything is good in the world," I think you're probably a little Pollyannish. It's a little bit of a polyglossian statement to get into literature. So we're going to be talking about wine. We're going to be talking about vessels. We're going to be talking about Pinot Noir. And I'm really stoked that all of you are here and spending a little time with me. This is an awesome time. As of course you guys know, we got about 10 minutes before we bring in our Instagram folks. A couple things that I'll be mentioning a couple times tonight. And that is, number one, that I will be taking this program off of the my personal Facebook page starting Monday. So today and on Wednesday, we're going to be tasting some keg Chardonnay and having some great conversations. I put up the schedule this week. And then we're going to basically be looking at moving the show permanently onto the J.Wilkes Wine Santa Barbara Facebook page. And then we'll also probably cross-post it as I do every night. You probably don't know it, but it's also on the personality page for Wes Hagen. So I had a long conversation with my social media masters today, and they're suggesting that I move a lot of the J.Wilkes programming off of my personal page and onto my personality page. My personal page is sort of maxed out on friends, and I want everyone to be my friend. And so instead of limiting myself to 5,000, I want to move it over where I can expand my personality page to as big as it ever wants to get. So thank you for helping push this program along to the point where I had to go get social media handlers so I can figure out how to do this. I'm also increasing my presence on Instagram significantly. So if you guys are interested, following me, it's Wes, W-E-S _ Hagen on Instagram. And I'm going to be posting 2 to 3 minimum, 7 to 8 maximum every day. A little post in the morning about what we're going to be doing on the show, if we're doing something on the show. On days when we don't have the show, like today, I posted, something with the dog, something about the show. I got a new coffee maker, which I was very excited about. I held back from making you guys watch me work out. My wife is wrecking me 3 times a week on a fantastic workout. The idea is we're going to get out of quarantine, tan, rested, and ready, beautiful and fit. And I've never worked out so significantly in my life, and I'm really enjoying how this is feeling. So looks like we have Michael Peters, Kasari Wine is on, and John Tevis just came in. And we got Michelle and Jim on the other side. We got Phil's in the house. We got Nick's in the house. Da-da! I got some homemade red wine sangria. Nick, I have to ask. So Nick Profaci, if you don't know him, is our sort of official home winemaker from the East Coast. He's on the edge of professional, and he makes some very, very good wines out of his backyard and some fruit that he buys out of Lodi, California. I'm guessing maybe you probably hold on to some of your smaller lots that aren't probably absolutely delicious, and maybe those become a little bit of your sangria mix, or homemade red wine sangria does sound nice. That sounds awesome. Yes, curfew in LA tonight at 5 p.m. I was thinking too, and before we get on, and I'm about 3 or 5 minutes or so until, I was thinking about last time in the early to mid 90s when I was teaching high school down in Rialto, California. That's where I was during the first major LA riots, the Rodney King stuff. And boy, without getting political or weird about it, I do remember coming to work that day. And it's very unusual where I worked at Eisenhower High School in Rialto, by the way, alma mater of Ronnie Lott from the 49ers, that it was a very interesting place that we got a lot of money from a lot of different organizations that wanted to see how racial parity played out in a high school environment. So when I was at Eisenhower, which was 92, 93, and 94, Eisenhower High School was almost exactly 30% white, 30% Hispanic, 30% African American, and 10% Asian and other. And I thought that was, didn't take very far for him to go to USC. And you know who else was a Trojan was Mr. J.Wilkes. So yes, and obviously a lot of my family went to SC, but a lot of my family also went to UCLA and Stanford. So Christmases were always interesting. But I remember walking into my classroom and asking myself, what do you teach as an English teacher in the middle of a riot? And so I decided to scrap my lesson plan for all 5 classes I taught that. And I just decided to take sort of maybe a line out of my sort of quasi-hippie background. And it's pretty embarrassing that some of the closest we get to understanding the Black experience as white people is music. It used to be jazz, which would pull white people into jazz clubs to understand the Black experience in the United States. Certainly the blues, and certainly rock and roll started in the Black neighborhoods, obviously with the blues and R&B. But then really, reggae for me. I listened to a lot of reggae in college, and maybe it gave me a little bit of a sense of the rage, spoken with wisdom. And, that's what really kills me is when I was watching Killer Mike do his Atlanta speech, or, listening to, President Obama, ex-President Obama. And, those are the things that really kind of tugged at my heartstrings. So the take-home message from when I was there in Rialto teaching was that I had never really felt white before. And so the phrase that I wrote on the board was, until the philosophy that holds one race superior and another inferior is permanently and completely discredited, everywhere is war. And that is a line specifically lifted from Haile Selassie's speech to the League of Nations after he had been, that Ethiopia had been invaded by Mussolini and Italy. You could argue that Mussolini was not a military genius and probably one of the only countries on the planet where his army could have gone in and had some success without help from the other Axis powers, was Ethiopia. And Haile Selassie, known as God on earth by the Rastafarians, basically said, League of Nations is supposed to protect us, and now we have been overrun. What are you going to do about it? And the League of Nations not only didn't respond, they refused to listen to his speech. A lot of people don't know that. When Haile Selassie gave that speech, there was still a lot of people who were trying not to like anger Mussolini, Hitler, and stuff. So there was a very strong sort of perspective of let's just let it lie. And so when he got up to give that speech that became such an important part of the song War by Bob Marley and the Wailers, the entire, almost everybody in the League of Nations spoke to each other loudly enough that no one could hear Haile Selassie speak, which I think is a grave injustice. And I thought that would be an interesting story to start us with, is that until the philosophy that holds one race superior and another inferior is totally and permanently discredited, we're going to have war. And tonight, the United States is in very, very isolated pockets. We are in trouble. We're burning, but we also know that the vast majority of us are supporting the idea of equality. The vast majority of us are hoping that all of this will end with some change that lasts, that we don't have to do this every 15 or 20 years, and that we are seeing, hopefully, some measured improvement. And perhaps, I think Will Smith tweeted something today saying, racism hasn't changed. It's just there's more cell phones out there and there's more people taking pictures of it. So we just need to know. And hey, Mark, it's really, really, really nice to have you out here. And I hope everything is safe and good out there in Sierra Madre. And I'm really hoping that everyone is enjoying a little bit of their time. Christy, be careful. Love it. Love it. Wow. Phil, you are making some serious, I guess it's Sir Rupert the Black. That sounds like a cocktail. That is an interesting and creative way of supporting the community. I like that. All right. And Hudson Valley for Nick. I hope everything is beautiful out there. Hopefully find a little bit of foie gras. I don't really like foie gras all that much, but I know the best I've ever had in the United States has definitely been from Hudson Valley. And also, I'm a big believer, even though I don't eat a lot of foie gras, that the freshness of the lobe is much more important than where it comes from. Obviously, the greatest foie gras I've ever had comes from sort of French, that I've had at French restaurants in Paris, and they probably made sure that those lobes were basically flown in that day. So yes. And Denise, so lovely to have you. Love it. And Brett, yeah, sorry about that curfew. Yeah, we're hoping we can all be together. And if it's not really curfew until we run out of wine, right? But what a blessing it is that we have each other, that we have safety, that we have our families. And I hope all of you are safe. And if anyone has had any problems recently, I really, really apologize. But I know that in my life, very early in the COVID crisis, I lost my my wine club manager, Julie. Her father passed from COVID in March, age 72, and no problems with his health. So I've taken this thing probably a little bit more seriously than a lot of people, knowing someone who had passed from COVID specifically really, really early on. So that's something that I am definitely taking this stuff seriously. All right, so we've got, basically we're right about to start, and I just need to go grab a little something and we will begin. I apologize. I'm going to start. Cool. Hey, everybody. And hey, Instagram. Welcome to Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. We've just been solving the world's problems over here on Instagram Live. And unfortunately, literally 30 seconds before I went on, my constant my constant glucose monitor went off and said that I was going into a diabetic low. So I'm just having a little sip of this magic tonic water that's, believe it or not, is 37 grams of carbohydrates per serving. How can tonic water have the same amount of high fructose corn syrup as Coca-Cola? I really don't like to drink anything that's sweetened. So this doesn't taste sweetened because it's so bitter because of the quinine. But hey, now I have my blood sugar settled and it's time to day drink. So everybody, welcome. So glad everyone could join us. And tonight we're talking about Pinot Noir wine vessels. We're going to be talking about what grapes are put into, how grapes move. We're going to basically be talking a little bit about history. We're going to talk about where the idea of the 750 milliliter wine bottle came from. We're going to talk about ceramic. We're going to talk about Kvevrý. What's the difference between Kvevrý and an amphora? These are the things we're going to talk about tonight, and I'm going to give you guys some ideas and some concepts so you can sort of imagine exactly how and when wine changed its vessels. Stainless steel, ceramic, glass, all of these things that we're going to be talking about tonight. We're also going to be talking about how we deliver wine to your glass from the winery through basically all the sales chains. So basically we're going to talk about little bottles, regular bottles, big bottles, really big bottles. And then we're going to talk a little bit about cans, talk about kegs, and just a tiny little bit let's see, about bag and box. And I'll tell you a really cool story about that too. So let's all have a quick and deep draft of a delicious adult beverage to make us and ground us in this moment. Take a deep breath, relax. The world will be better. It's kind of in a weird place right now. And when we see inequity and when we see people being mistreated, when we see things like we've all seen in the last few days, I'm hoping that you've had a reaction and that you're human. If you are overtly racist, you might want to leave right now because you're not going to have a very good time on this program tonight, because I encourage flourishing. I encourage rationality and reason, and the idea that how important it is for us to be able to get together, be mutually respectful, and to make sure that we all have the ability to be a flourishing human being on the planet. So we're starting tonight doing something a little bit unusual, and I'm not going to be preaching to you. I'm not going to be pretending that I have all the answers. I'm not going to be pretending that I am a paragon of virtue. We all have our slip-ups. We all have our problems, but damn it, today, I want to be strongly on the side of justice. And so I want to read you a very short 2 paragraphs written by Steven Pinker in Enlightenment Now. Not only my favorite book, but also Bill Gates' favorite book, who is going to put, obviously, a chip in you, and he's going to figure out where you are. So we can change the world. I'm kidding. All right, so this comes from Chapter 15, Equal Rights. Just a quick 2 paragraphs. Humans are liable to treat entire categories of other humans as means to an end or nuisances to be cast aside. Coalitions bound by race or creed seek to dominate rival coalitions. Men try to control the labor, freedom, and sexuality of women. People translate their discomfort with sexual nonconformity into moralistic condemnation. We call these phenomena racism, sexism, and homophobia, and they have been rampant to various degrees in most cultures throughout history. The disavowal of these evils is a large part of what we call civil rights or equal rights. The historic expansion of these rights, the stories of Selma, Seneca Falls, and Stonewall, is a stirring chapter in the story of human progress. The rights of racial minorities, women, and gay people continue to advance, each recently emblazoned on a milestone. The year 2017, this was published in 2018, saw the completion of 2 terms in office by the first African-American president, an achievement movingly captured by First Lady Michelle Obama in a speech to the Democratic National Convention in 2016. Quote, "I wake up every morning in a house that was built by slaves, and I watch my daughters, 2 beautiful, intelligent black young women, playing with their dogs on the White House lawn. Barack Obama was succeeded by the first woman nominee of a major party in a presidential election less than a century after American women were even allowed to vote.
She won a solid plurality of the popular vote and would have been president were it not for peculiarities in the electoral college system and other quirks of the election year. In a parallel universe, very similar to this one, until November 8th, 2016, the world's three most influential nations, the US, the UK, and Germany, would all have been led by women. And in 2015, just a dozen years after it ruled that homosexual activity may not be criminalized, the Supreme Court guaranteed the right of marriage to same-sex couples. This is not an excuse. This is not saying everything's cool. This is, I basically went through this with Chanda before I came on and said, kind of, what do you think? To me, this grounds us in the idea that we are moving towards rational behavior. We're moving towards a world where we don't see color. We're moving towards, but times like this really stab us and give us that pain to say, no, we're not. There's serious problems with serious people, and there's institutionalized racism in this country that we have to pay attention to. That's all I wanted to say about that, just to make sure you guys know what side I'm on. And if you don't like it, get the hell off my channel. I really don't care. This show's about flourishing, kindness, helpfulness, and we need more of that. And I hope that maybe, as well as reaching out to the people that might be basically impacted by COVID, that we also make sure that we can do anything and everything we can to show the world that we are supporting the idea of equality and getting just the hell out of this whole idea of racism. I think we just need to hit the streets. We need to hit social media. We need to hit the world to say, look, there are more of us than there are of you. There are more people that are inclusive. There are more people that love humanity. There are more people that understand that everyone has something to add and to give to this society, that if we can't get there, we're in deep trouble. So let's all have a deep drink, and let's try to focus our attention on making this world a better place. And we're going to start by learning a little bit about wine. I feel like it's a little weird talking about wine after getting a little bit all kind of worked up about what's going on in the world, but I'm ready. So let's talk about wine and let's lose ourselves a little bit. Okay, so tonight we're tasting a Pinot Noir, J.Wilkes 2016. Why is the label so lame? I will tell you why the label is so lame. The label is so lame because it is a keg sample. So here's the problem. How do you sell a keg of wine? Keg over the shoulder with a tap, and you go into, account by account. Hey, try this. No, it's pretty tough. So what you have to do, when we started selling keg wine, it was mainly because J.Wilkes was chosen by the Santa Barbara Bowl, one of the greatest venues where you can't really hear the music because everyone talks too loud and they can't play the music too loud. But anyways, the Santa Barbara Bowl chose J.Wilkes and our winemaking team, myself included, to make the wines for the Santa Barbara Bowl. So we would be the only wine you get at the Santa Barbara Bowl. So I apologize, and I'm really stoked. If you go to the Santa Barbara Bowl and you're going to go see Radiohead or Santana or Primus, or Oslamati, whatever, your choice is either you're going to sneak some wine in, or you're going to drink J.Wilkes. So we have both J.Wilkes Chardonnay and J.Wilkes Pinot Noir in the Santa Barbara Bowl, and as hopefully at some point when we get back together for some rad concerts, we'll all be drinking that as well. So we have some extra kegs to sell because I don't think the Santa Barbara Bowl is going to be picking those up anytime soon. So we're talking about maybe putting kegs. Oh, by the way, I don't know what's going on with the curfew in Santa Barbara, but the tasting room is reopened. So our tasting room in Santa Barbara, you can go into the tasting room, do flights, taste wine, the whole 9 yards, but you have to buy glasses or a bottle, and you have to buy food. That's how it is right now. That's going to be changing. So there you pretty much go, right? So really important to understand that, yeah. And so because we have an extra couple kegs, we're talking a little bit about keg wine. We want to see people get excited about kegs and all of that good stuff. So this wine was actually taken out of a keg. No, excuse me. This wine was actually bottled the same day that we put the wine in the kegs, and took the same wine out of the tank and bottled it. But we did not use normal bottling protocol. We basically put this wine into this bottle exactly the same way that the keg wine went into the keg. So the keg is going to have a little more volume, and I think Travis would probably agree with me, who knows more about the chemistry of winemaking than I do, that the larger amount of wine you have together, so if you have 750 milliliters, that wine is going to oxidize much faster than if you have 15 or what is it, a 20-liter keg. So we have those like nice long 20-liter kegs, and I think we figured out that's about 200 glasses of wine ish, give or take. 200 pours. So, it's a pretty nice amount of wine. And especially that you just send the keg back and you've saved 200 bottles or, 500 cans or however many. It's a really, really good way of storing wine. So this is the 2016 Pinot Noir. And I think I preferred the 15 vintage of J.Wilkes to 16. This was a little tweaky, different. We were using, I think, Bendecido, Solomon Hills, Gary, and Sierra Madre to make these wines, and we blended them just a little different. So it's going to be a little different than the 16. And I did taste the 16 on the show just maybe a week or two ago, so kind of get a good idea. And as I was kind of looking at the color, and I always like to show you guys the color. So you can kind of see right there. Yeah, so what I'm expecting is 2016 is going to have a little bit of a secondary, I wouldn't expect any tertiary characteristics. Secondary characteristics as the baby fat falls off, as it loses a little bit of its fruit, as it loses a little bit of its kind of extract, a little bit more of the earthiness kind of comes out. Kind of cherry, raspberry, a little bit of strawberry jam. Definitely get a nice earthy aroma, somewhere between like loam and mushroom, little baking spice, specifically clove. I'd say maybe 15% less, and there's a Twizzler thing, like that really nice strawberry Twizzler thing. Strawberry Twizzlers are one of my favorite candies in the world. Yeah, gummy Coke bottles and strawberry Twizzlers, if you're ever wondering. But yes, I am a type 1 diabetic, so I will look at you a little funny when you hand me a package. But, there's always insulin. Or, man, my blood sugar was just low. I could be eating candy. Feeling good. Stress plays havoc with your glucose. It's really weird. Ever since I got my monitor, it's really weird what happened. Back to the Pinot Noir. It's not like super, super jammy, like a lot of people would say. You can tell the difference between Burgundy and California Pinot, because California Pinots are very fruity. Burgundian wines are very earthy, and then Oregon and New Zealand are kind of somewhere in between. This wine really does ride a nice line, and that's what I love about Pinot Noir from Santa Maria Valley once it has 4 to 5 years on it, especially if it comes from great vineyards like Sierra Madre, Gary, Bendecido, Solomon Hills, because it loses that little bit of like a vinyl character and a little bit of really, really bright, jammy fruit, and starts getting that earthiness and starts approximating some of those wonderful characters that you can sometimes find in really expensive wines that I can't afford, like, Romanée-Conti and Echezot and La Tâche, where you get not only the earthiness, not only the loaminess and the mushroomy and the fruity, but you also get those amazing aromas of like tar and violets and hints of gun smoke and just so many complex things. So it's really starting to show some nice complexity. Now, how long does wine last in keg? How long do you think? How long do you think if I sold you a keg, how long do you think I would tell you that you had to sell that keg once you had tapped it? So it's 1 year untapped, and it's basically 90 to 100 days tapped. As long as you're using a proper either nitrogen or argon system to displace the wine with gas. So in those kegs, you never just want to suck the liquid out and replace it with oxygen or normal ambient atmosphere. You definitely want to pump that, basically extract that wine out. And any keg system that's set up for wine is going to do exactly that. So there you go. Absolutely. Pinot Noir 2016, J.Wilkes. 20 to 25% new French oak. Tastes just perfect. Gives the wine a little bit of vanillin. I think some of that clove character I got in the nose was barrel driven. How would this wine taste without any oak influence? It was 100% stainless steel. I think it would show a little more raspberry, a little more fruit purity. I think the slight loamy, mushroomy thing, just like that little hint, like if someone was just starting to cook up some like chanterelle mushrooms, and before they put the shallots or the wine in, you just kind of get that slightly toasted mushroom aroma. I definitely get that, and I think that would be in there. as the wine. I kind of think there might be a market for stainless steel and unoaked, reds like Nouveau Beaujolais. I mean, Nouveau's kind of taking a dive, so maybe we got to be a little careful before we start making a stainless steel Pinot Noir. But I have made stainless steel Pinot Noir. Definitely at Clos Pepe as an experiment to taste it. We ended up blending it in our final wine in a 55-gallon stainless drum, but it actually was one of the most fascinating Pinots I made. Unfortunately, I thought it was just a little bit. I think the appreciation for it would have been very difficult to find the right audience, and plus, we were selling that Pinot for $55 to $65 a bottle. And there's probably not a huge market in people that are looking for a $60 unoaked Pinot Noir, but you never know, And I totally agree with Arped Vin. And if you think I should know who you are with your name, and I don't, I'm sorry. On Instagram, I'll try to say your name as best as I can. But yes, I love Grenache because of two things without oak. We're talking about unoaked varieties, and if you have questions. Absolutely. I would love to hear where you are, what you're drinking, what questions you have, questions about Pinot Noir, questions about bottles, cans, kegs, bag and box, all that stuff, because that's where we're going next. But we always take a little break between the tasting and our discussion for the night. And so I want to hear what you guys have to say. And Nick is talking about earthy and rustic aroma flavors. Yeah, I mean, that's what you paid $1,000 for. I mean, why do you pay $2,000 for a bottle of Romanée-Conti at release? You don't spend $2,000 on a bottle of Romanée-Conti to open it that night. And if you do, bless you for having that much money. Please send some to somewhere that really matters. But in the end, what we pay for is the potential of that wine. The potential of that wine to start unfolding layers of complexity that when we drink them, they are not only confounding, but they change our life. If I drank old Burgundy every night, would it change my life every night? God, I wish I could say yes. I would say, can I reset my palate? Can I reset my brain? Can I reset my frame of reference to have that same experience that I had in Clinton was being impeached. It was 99. I think it was December of 1999 when I tasted my first amazing, it was the wine that changed my life. It was a Grand Cru in Chambertin, Burgundy. It was at the Rotisserie de Chambertin, and it was a 1972 Louis Trappé Chapelle Chambertin Grand Cru. And it was more things. It was so complex, and it was so confounding, and it was so beautiful that I remember the man who sold us the bottle, the owner of the restaurant, his wines are really cheap because he owns part of the Chambertin vineyard. So Louis Trappé makes the wines and then brings him back some for free for getting the fruit. So this wine, has not moved. Once it was racked in 1974, it had never moved until he pulled it off the rack and served it to our table. Perfect cellaring, perfect provenance. When he opened it, he poured himself. We expected, like when you buy a 1972 Chapelle Chambertin from Louis Trappé in that quality in the United States would be worth at least $1,500. He sold it to us for 80 euros in 99. Quite honestly, that wine at auction back in 99 would have been maybe $400 or $500. But so we would expect, that he wanted to know what was going on with his 72 Chapelle. He'd pour himself. Dude poured, I swear, 4 to 5 ounces of that wine in his glass and then just sat over at his table and did his books. Part of me loved the swag. Part of me loved this kind of the flex, because he was saying, all right, I'll charge you like 1/3 of what these wines are worth, but I'm going to drink a quarter of the bottle. Fortunately, we drank a lot more wine that night, but I'll tell you what, sticking my nose in that 72 Chapelle Chambertin, I've said it made me a winemaker. I think a more accurate description was it initiated me into the deeper wisdom of Burgundy, France, and Pinot Noir. It was that moment where a young filmmaker sees American Beauty or Fight Club, or if you want to go a little more classic, Citizen Kane. Can you make a modern movie without reading How to Write, reading Sid Field's screenplay book, and then watching, the classics, including Citizen Kane, which obviously changed, and I didn't know how much Citizen Kane changed cinema by virtue, not necessarily how the movie made me feel, but how the movie was shot and basically set up a lot of how modern cinema was shot. So that sort of gives you a little bit of an idea on that. And I totally agree. Like I was mentioning, Grenache is beautiful without oak because it has a confectionery character. It has a very grapey character. It expresses itself incredibly beautiful as a pleasure wine, and it really doesn't need a lot of oak because. And then the question is, why are we putting so much oak in wine as Americans as we're consuming 90% of the wines we purchase within 48 hours? I think it's actually worth asking. Looks like yes. I got a question. Curious, do you have a favorite clone of Pinot Noir? All of them, and I'll tell you why. The more we get closer back to Massel selection with amazing amounts of different clonal variation, the more complete the wines will become. Is Burgundy affected, and is its complexity affected by Massel selection? So what's Massel selection versus clonal selection? We should talk about this one night in a deep dive. I'll try to make it quick. Clonal selection is where you take one vine, you take a clipping from that, you put it in the ground, you let that grow, you take clippings from that, you put those in the ground, and you basically have a mother vine, and every single vine in a vineyard that says like clone 115, which in the Santa Rita Hills was my favorite clone. If I had to choose a clone, I would have gone 115. Pomard 4 is very, very close after that. So do you have a new clone, an old clone? Clones are very trendy. Winemakers always want the new one. They want the 828, the 667, the 777, the 113, 114, 115, all of these clones. You know, the old school guys, you know, you talk to Adam Tolmack, you talk to Ken Brown, you know, you talk to Jim Clendenin, he's going to talk to you about Swan, he's going to talk to you about Martinelli, he's going to talk to you, you know, about Wadenswil, he's going to talk to you about Pomard 3 and 4. So you got sort of the old clones and the new clones. The new clones tend to have smaller berries, more tight cluster architecture, and as a result, they have slightly lower juice to skin ratio, and as a result, they make bigger, richer wines. So if you want, you know, in a world where Meiomi is probably selling at that price point, probably better than just about any Pinot Noir in the world, and I won't go into the Meiomi thing because, you know, the Wagners now have more money than me, and I don't want them to sue me, but, you know, some people do not want the Meiomi style of Pinot Noir, but those trends, when you look at the Nielsen data and you look at everything else, the scan data, people love big, ripe wines. So these new clones do give that. Now, I found at Clopepi that the 115 clone across the board made the most complete wine. But when I took the 115 clones that I thought maybe made the best wine I could possibly make at the Clos, and I threw in some Pomard just to see what would happen, better. Pinot Noir, damn it, is gestalt. The more clones from one property you throw into that wine, the more you are giving a full disclosure of the terroir of that region. And you know I don't like the word terroir when applied to domestic vineyards. I prefer the term typicity, because to me the idea of terroir is too French to steal. The idea that there's a typical style of wine that comes off of a property or from a winemaker, as long as, I don't mind terroir too much as long as you include human influence. Because if you start saying that there is some platonic ideal of what Romanée-Conti tastes like without Pinot Noir, you're insane. Auberta Villaine, partially insane, made this statement. Pinot Noir does not exist. It is a ghost. It is like, speaking of Citizen Kane, it is like Rosebud. Does it exist? Who knows? Pinot Noir is the ultimate vehicle. I'm speaking Italian. Pinot Noir is the ultimate vehicle for showcasing terroir. Auberta Villaine, general manager at the Domaine de la Romanée-Conti, basically said Pinot Noir is a vehicle. That's all it is. It's a vehicle to show you dirt in a glass. I think it's a little more, but I get what he's saying. I think only the general manager of the Domaine de la Romanée-Conti could make such a statement with such sort of glaring absolutes. Is Pinot Noir a vehicle for showcasing terroir? Yes. Is it the greatest vehicle of the various genetic accessions of Vitis vinifera for showcasing place? Yes. Is it likely to make a really, really horrible wine in most places where grapes are grown? Yes. Is it kind of like truffles? It's got to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. Yes, it really is. So, I mean, Pinot Noir is obviously something incredibly special. So, if I had to give you an absolute answer on that, I would say the 115 clone. Rick Pratt's in the house. Love to see you. Jessica Foster. Lovely to hear from you. And Adam's here. Chef Scott Valenti. Making me hungry, brother. And we've got Teresa showed up. That's fantastic. Really appreciate that. And a bunch of Jims and Nicks are talking Claiborne and Churchill and Edna Valley and all these other wonderful wines. I've always been a big fan of Claiborne and Churchill. I think they really, really do a good job. All right. Well, fortunately, some folks are talking about my LA friends are talking a little bit about a little curfew that's going on down there. But hey, I guess we've been in training for curfew at least. Yeah, we'll leave that alone for now. No problem. No problem. I'm glad you enjoyed the answer. Yep. Vineyard you're buying is planted at 115. Dude, you're in good shape. Santa Rosa Road or 246? I think both have a lot to offer. I do think 246 in Santa Rita Hills perhaps is a better Chardonnay side, and maybe the Santa Rosa Road side might be a little bit, I would say for me, if I had to like make some massive sort of kind of generalization, that the Highway 246 corridor would be sort of like the Côte de Beaune, and the Santa Rosa Road corridor would be more like the Côte de Nuit. Côte de Nuit in Burgundy being the area that is traditionally known for the best Pinot Noir production, and the Côte de Beaune generally being known for Chardonnay. But if you've ever had, a Volnay or, oh my gosh, or a Meursault Rouge, a Pinot Noir made in Meursault, oh my gosh, the wines down in the bone. Just the same way that Santa Rita Hills and 246 corridor makes some kick-ass Pinot Noir. Babcock, Clos Pepe, Kessler Hawk. But when we're talking about Chardonnay, I'm starting to think about Huber across the road. Rancho Santa Rosa, which is the Foley property. So all that is really good stuff. Okay, so I think I've caught up with everyone who's come online. Thank you so much for everybody who's online. What we're going to talk a little bit about, and I'm going to make this a quick and dirty summation of the world of wine vessels, a little bit about the history of wine vessels. So where I want to start is how grapes get basically from the vineyard into your glass. So let's talk a little bit about vessels throughout that process. And then if you guys have questions about the vessels or you want me to go into a slightly deeper dive about any of these vessels, please let me know. So we're going to start in the modern world and we're going to work our way a little bit backwards. So if you're in a modern vineyard, you're going to have a tractor with basically a trailer on the back that can go through the rows. There's going to generally be either 2 or 3 1,000-pound 4 feet by 4 feet by 2 feet tall plastic picking bins. They're made by a company generally called Macro Bin. And you can basically, if you stack that bin with as much grapes as you can pour in there, and just a big kind of like overflowing pot, bin of grapes, it's about 1,000 pounds. You can get a real 1,000 pounds if you really get a good heaping bin. How does it get in there? Well, in the field, when you're picking grapes, you're going to generally put them into one of two vessels. You're going to put them either into just your standard 5-gallon plastic bucket with a handle, because that is about 25, 30 pounds of fruit. So 40 of those 40 full buckets would generally fill up one of those picking bins. So you can kind of see, I like 20 pickers. You can turn around 2 buckets. You should be able to get 2 buckets of fruit in Pinot Noir in less than 5 to 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes into the bins. The bins should be being taken to the barn or wherever you're keeping them, nice and cool. You're going to want to take the fruit down there, put on new empty bins, or have two trailers, one with empty bins and someone unloading them as someone goes. Those bins go right back into the field, and then all the people have been waiting for the tractor, so we all start dumping our bins into that tractor. Some people use 2 tractors. We, at Clos Pepe, only used 1, although we still had 2 tractors in case one went bad. And then so buckets, or you can pick in lugs. Lugs are these yellow stacking bins. There's another name for them in the wine industry because how difficult they are to manage, clean, and make sure you have enough of them. There's a bad word in them. I won't tell you, but if you can ask me off camera sometime and I'll tell you. But these little stacking yellow bins, you put them under the vine, you pick your clusters, you drop them in. When they're full, you stack them. You bring all these stacks. You don't even need picking bins. You just stack, all of these hundreds of little lugs with maybe 15 pounds of fruit per, and you put all those lugs onto a tractor, put a strap over it, pull it in, and then you actually empty those lugs either onto a conveyor belt where the fruit is sorted, or as I would do, if the picking was done in a way that I wouldn't yell at anybody, the fruit would be clean, no leaves, no mog, material other than grapes, dump those little yellow suckers right into the crusher destemmer or the press. Okay, so the juice comes out or the grapes come out, stems go out the other way. You end up fermenting. Let's talk about how to what vessels we can ferment in and how it affects it. The most common probably material for fermenting grapes into wine is stainless steel. Stainless steel, or what the French Europeans would call inox, is one of the greatest inventions and one of the greatest advancements in the history of wine. It is manageable to be incredibly sterile. You can tell just by a visual observation if it's clean. It is durable, and it is very long lasting. A good stainless steel tank can last 3 or 4 human lifetimes, and just as long as you're careful with it around, with your forklift. You can put it into a stainless steel tank, which is a big 5,000, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 gallon tank right there that's kind of bolted onto the concrete floor of the winery. Or you can use what are called porta tanks by a company called Transtor in Missouri, some of the best portable tanks. They come in 150 all the way up into 2,000 gallon portable tanks that can actually be picked up by a forklift and moved. Very, very important to understand. So stainless steel is incredibly neutral in the way that it impacts the flavors of wine that is put in it. Neutral in the fact that it doesn't impart any character from the actual material that the wine is touching. But stainless steel does have an impact because you have 2 major choices while fermenting in stainless steel. One would be to allow oxygen ingress, some oxygen to be moving in and out of the tank. And that would be an oxidative fermentation. The other 2 other options would be to limit the amount of oxygen that goes into the tank and not pressurize the tank to keep no oxygen in, but minimize the oxygen in that stainless tank to do what we would call an anaerobic or a reductive fermentation. Reductive fermentations tend to get a little funkier. They might produce a little more of that sort of earthiness or mushroomy. They can actually even produce hydrogen sulfide, which smells like rotten eggs. Why does it smell like rotten eggs? Because basically the yeast run out of nutrients and they began to cannibalize and eat themselves, and as a result produce hydrogen sulfide, or hydrogen sulfide can be produced even in a different fermentation, but it'll tend to blow off if you give an opportunity for whatever gases are being produced by the fermentation. Can they blow off, or are they trapped? And if they're trapped, it's sort of like Vegas. Whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and it gets a little funky and sexy and weird, right? And then if you are allowing oxygen ingress or even purposefully adding oxygen to your ferment, that's going to encourage the weird aromas that are produced during fermentation to blow off. I like a little bit of reductive fermentation. If you like German Riesling, if you love Austrian Riesling or Swiss Riesling, chances are you prefer a more reductive fermentation, because the fermentations in those Germanic countries tend to be a little more reductive, and they appreciate the reductive. Why in the world would you want a reductive fermentation? I want a reductive fermentation because it exacerbates the minerality of a wine. You get that little funk, but you also get that deep, deep, chalky minerality. Not just automatically. I mean, it has to be in the wine, but I think it increases it. Cool stuff. All right, so we are fermenting. What else could we ferment in? We could ferment in a concrete egg, which encourages the wine to stir itself a little bit as it ferments and moves. Is it really giving the wine any minerality from the concrete? No, because the concrete never touches the wine in a concrete egg. It's about the shape of the vessel, and it's about the gases that can and can't get in the egg. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean a concrete egg there's nothing that the wine touches that's concrete. It's all sealed with a polymer. And so whatever sealant is used on those concrete eggs is really what the wine's going to be in contact with. That sealant, unless people are idiots, will be non-toxic, permanent, very safe, and won't be affected by the wine, and it'll certainly be flavor neutral. So concrete eggs, I mean, if you really want to go that way, why not go with Kvevery? And that's your next option, which is to go back 7,000 years and use what they were using in Transcaucasia during the end of the Neolithic and the Chalcolithic period, back to 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, all the way up to maybe just yesterday, where Kvevari are still used for the production of orange wine and some other wines within the Transcaucasia area between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, the highlands of Anatolian Turkey, as well as the highlands of Iran. So they would use a Kvevari, and a Kvevari looks like an amphora, but it is not an amphora. It's a more robust amphora. Amphorae are used for transporting wine. Amphorae are meant to carry about 60 liters of wine, so 15 gallons. So one strong human or two fairly weak humans can either get on either side of the amphora or just carry it and move it up the gangplank of a ship and then put it into the hold of the ship. And the amphorae were pointed so that they would nest. You can see all kinds of incredible shipwrecks where the amphorae are stacked 8 high and beautiful things, and that's exactly what they were. Amphorae were so cheap to produce. Two things about amphorae. One is you knew what wine you were buying when you bought it from an amphorae because the handles had a very specific design, and those designs were the brands. So if you knew that the handles had snakes on them and you had the wine with a snake on it before, chances are it was the same producer, and as a result, it was sort of like the first label were the handles of the amphorae. Kvevari are meant for fermentation. So they're more robust, they're thicker, they're larger. Some Kvevari in the ancient world probably got up to hundreds and hundreds of liters. And they're actually pointed like an amphorae, not for nesting during shipping, but instead for putting into a big damn hole in the ground to control the temperature of the fermentation. Kvevari have been used for thousands of years. I'm going to say 8,000 years, at least 8,000 years. This type of terracotta pottery has been used as a fermentation vessel that was buried in or underneath the ground. That's pretty amazing if you think about it, that we have been using temperature control in winemaking since the Chalcolithic period as a result of us learning how to fire pottery. Firing pottery was incredibly important because as soon as we had pottery, we also now have the archaeological evidence in pottery sherds of tartaric acid and succinic acid, as well as, what is that stuff? There's another acid that has to come from grapes. So pretty interesting stuff, So Kvevari are used for fermentation, and we'll talk a little, and then amphorae. And amphorae were so cheap, as I was mentioning, that in general, one reason why we have so many examples of all these handles and stuff is there are pottery graveyards where literally hundreds of thousands of shards and from tens of thousands of amphorae. Once the wine was transferred into other vessels, generally or emptied, it was cheaper to just make new amphorae wherever the wine was being produced than to bring the empty amphorae back. Some amphorae were refilled, and we do have amphorae to thank for sulfur dioxide, because sulfur dioxide was also used to desiccate the interior of the amphorae before they were refilled. The idea is, how can we get this? They knew that if they put wine in a wet vessel, that when they brought it wherever it was, chances are there's a much better chance of it being stinky and funky. So what they did is they had to find a way to dry out. And the way that they dried stuff in the ancient world and the way that they fumigated in the ancient world, if you had bugs and rats and all kinds of stuff in your house in Mesopotamia, your house in Assyria, your house in Babylon, you would burn sulfur. You would fumigate your house with sulfur because it would dry it out, it would kill all the bugs, and it would make it safe for humans after you open the windows and let it air out. As a result, they thought, well, let's desiccate these amphorae with sulfur dioxide. They did so, and whatever genius figured this thing out by mistake, they figured when they put the wine in this desiccated vessel that had these crystals of sulfur dioxide embedded in the ceramic, they went and sold that wine, and when it was tasted, someone paid more for that lot than the lot that had not been desiccated with sulfur. And that there again, some people say it was the Romans, some people say it was the Egyptians, some people want to say it was the Cretans. Whoever it was, thank you. Sulfur dioxide is incredibly important in the production of wine. Okay, so we've gotten through talking about aging. So let's just go right into barrels. So barrels. Barrels were originally invented. The hogshead barrel was originally basically invented. The best thing we can know is we know that in the time of Julius Caesar, the Gauls, who were carrying Roman wine up the Rhone estuary to trade for lumber and honey, were emptying amphorae into oak barrel and vessels to make that transport. Nice thing about a barrel is you can roll it. Amphora you can't. Amphora, it's basically how much you can carry, and that's why that 60-liter was generally considered the de rigueur sizing of that wine vessel. So in the end, I think one of the more important things. Hold on one sec. How dare someone Skype call me right in the middle? I've turned everything off, all my devices, but Skype's still after me. That's not true. I still know what my glucose level is. But yeah, just like barrels, so the Romans first traded with the Gauls. The Gauls had the barrels, and the barrels would be rolled, and they would be basically taken up the Rhone. Now, the barrels were originally probably made out of oak from that region, Quercus robur. Now, as I've said before, and I won't get too much into it because you've heard the story if you've been watching, is that the French, before the end of World War II, preferred to use Hungarian, Slovenian oak, Quercus robur from Eastern Europe. When the Iron Curtain fell at the end of World War II, and the Soviet Union took control of Eastern Europe, they couldn't get their barrels anymore. So as a result, a fledgling barrel business within France that has always been there. It's not like barrels had never been made in France. The Gauls made barrels, but the French really relied on these Eastern European barrels because they were probably fairly inexpensive and the flavor was good. So then after World War II is really when the French began to use their own forests for the production of barrels. The Limousin forest generally for Bordeaux varieties, Tronchet, Bertrange, Allier, for Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and all over the place for Rhones. Now, in the modern world, we're kind of living in a flat economy, so we can get barrels from wherever the hell we want. So, I mean, if you want acacia barrels, I personally don't like the flavor of acacia barrels. Some people really think that they're awesome. I think they're used a little bit more in South Africa than they are in California. So what do we use? I like French oak. I like Allier, Tronchet, Bertrange, my three favorite forests for the production of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. I like Demi French oak barrels for Chardonnay. I like Ramond. I like Francois Ferrer. I like Tonneau. I like Sirlug. All these are beautiful barrels for the production of Pinot Noir that I like to use. So the barrels can either be, if you're a home winemaker, you've seen 15-gallon barrels. Worthless unless you're making cocktails on I think 15-gallon barrels are useless. 30-gallon barrels, okay. That makes a little bit of sense, and I can make some pretty good sound wine in a 30-gallon barrel. The standard size of what we call a hogshead, which would be a general barrel in the United States, is 55 gallons or 225 liters. And then we also have sort of a double barrel, also kind of known as a puncheon. We basically got almost 500 liters of wine can fit in one of these things, and it slowly releases its oak flavor into the wine. So I know some of the winemakers I respect the most always have 6, 10, 12 puncheons in their cellar, and then maybe a couple hundred barrels. So they can take the wine from the puncheon and really understand how the puncheon wine tastes compared to the hogshead or the 55-gallon barrel wine to see how the oak is integrating into the wine. So that's a little bit more about how barrels work. Now, you can also find fermenters as well as places to age wine that are built by these barrel companies, but they are literally wooden tanks and wooden fermenters. And I've seen some that go up to 600, 1,000, 1,200 gallons that you can fit in, 10 tons into one huge French oak vessel. You do not want to know how much those things cost. Very, very expensive and very, very cost prohibitive. Oh, American oak. So Quercus alba, Minnesota, really Missouri, all the way down to, I think, Mississippi. Basically all along the Mississippi Valley. You basically have the American white oak, which is traditionally known to provide the flavor and character of bourbon. So if you want to know what American oak tastes like, just think of bourbon: coconut, dill, vanilla. Coconut, or I should probably say vanilla, coconut, dill, because those are the predominant flavors that I get. So if you have a Chardonnay or perhaps a Syrah or a Zinfandel or a Petit Syrah or an Alicante Bouschet. These are the grapes that I would think about using a little bit of American oak on. Would never use it with Pinot Noir. Personally, would never use it with Cabernet, but I do know some people who do. Why not? Aren't you a patriot, Wes? Come on. No, it's just, French oak tastes, it has this beautiful conversation with Pinot Noir that I've never tasted an American oaked Pinot Noir that has the same conversation. Now, if you put one American oak barrel and 100 new barrels that were French, would it add some interest or complexity? Sure it would. In fact, I mean, Vosne Romani, the most expensive wine in the world, I mean, Romani Conti, always has a hint of dill. But if there is one soupçon of dill in an American Pinot Noir, it is a flaw. But it is de rigueur in Vosne Romani. It's all right. They invented it. They can make the rules. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So that's a little bit different. So Hungarian, Russian, Slovenian, basically almost all European oak is Quercus robur. And American oak, it's really easy to remember because America starts with an A and Quercus alba also starts with an A. Europe is further in the alphabet, and so is robur. So Quercus alba, which is literally translated from Latin, white oak, Quercus alba. Think alba white, no, maybe it's not. Quercus alba, whatever. It's basically gonna give you a little bit more of sort of a clunky intensity of the three flavors that I described. All right, so what are we gonna blend with? Okay, so now the wine is aged. We're gonna take it out. We're gonna put it in probably like graduated pitchers. So we're gonna go down, we're gonna do our blend. So we're gonna take some stuff, we're gonna take the sampling valve and put it in a graduated cylinder or a graduated pitcher that has how many milliliters. Then we're gonna put it into a smaller graduated cylinder, and then we're gonna be measuring to the milliliter and writing down everything we're putting, and then we're pouring it from these into another, either a blending vessel. If we're blending with a number of other people, we're going to blend 300-400 mils and then pass it around the table. We're going to all evaluate the same wine. But sometimes we just blend for ourselves the first half of the day, and then we bring the best blends that we can make individually to the group. We reblend them, and then we taste them. Almost always in a glass, and this is my favorite glass for blending Pinot Noir, and then for all other glasses, I like the Riedel Venom Sauvignon Blanc. So that's a vessel, right? I mean, this is the greatest vessel because this is the one that takes all the time and effort from the winemaker and the vintner and the grower and the workers and the drivers and everybody else, and translates their hard work into fluid in my mouth. All right, let's finish up. A couple minutes on consumer packaging. So, where did this come from? Well, that's a long story. What I want to talk about is how much wine is in this bottle and where that came from. And the story I heard, which is vaguely anecdotal, is that the 750 milliliter bottle was actually made standardized before there was glass, before wine had ever been put in glass. It was standardized in vaguely 750 milliliter clay sort of bottles. They kind of almost look like a circular bottle, and they were generally capped with either wax or even a small piece of cork. Sometimes they even put a little olive oil on the top, so you pour out the olive oil, dip your bread in it, and then the olive oil made a oxygen barrier, so the air couldn't get to the wine in your ceramic gourd. Why 4 glasses? Because that's really what 750 milliliters is. It is considered 4 servings of wine. And it hasn't really changed since Roman times. It was considered 4 servings back then. So why did the Romans make this a regular size of a vessel? And the answer is slavery. Roman slaves, by the Roman law, the slave owners were required to give every slave in their employ 1 ration of wine a day, and that ration was that size, was 4 glasses. So in general, 1 ration of wine in the Roman Empire meant 1 slave's portion. And because slavery was so popular in Rome and there were so many people that were slaves, you had to buy a lot of these either own these jugs so you could fill them and give them to your slaves. Unfortunately, most of the wine given to the slaves wasn't really good wine. It was a second pressing, or they would press the wine and then they would add water to it, maybe some beets or something with a little bit of color and a little sweetness, let it re-ferment, and then do a second pressing and then give that to the slave. So it was kind of a lame way to go, right? But at least there was some law saying that there was, for either medicine or to make your body feel better after a hard day of work or just to help you go to sleep. In general, 750 milliliters or 4 glasses of wine became the regular. Now, on airplanes, you get the little 187s. That is a quarter of a bottle, believe it or not. I don't know how in the world a 187 times 4 is 750 or very close to it. And then you go up to a 375, which sometimes we call a split, sometimes we call it a half bottle. I think probably half bottle is probably a little bit more accurate. But we've got the half bottle, which is a nice way of teasing yourself and reminding you maybe you drink a little bit more than you used to. And then it goes up 750. Then we go up into 1.5. And even though there was no famous biblical king named Magnum, Magnum is what we call a 1.5 liter. And I'm not going to go through all the sizes. You can look them up online, very easy to find. But they are all named after Babylonian, biblical, and Persian kings. Nebuchadnezzar, Balthazar, Methuselah, that kind of stuff. So that's where you start getting into the big ones. Cans increased in sales just in 2019 by 62%. The only thing that happened in the alcohol industry that was more surprising than wine in cans last year was seltzer. Anyway, some people don't like the taste of alcohol. Some people like their alcohol to taste like water. That's up to them. If it's delicious and it gets them happy, it's a beautiful thing. I don't drink cocktails. I like the flavor of alcohol. It's just the way it is. What else? We got cans. Two last ones. One is going to be bag and box, and the other one is going to be keg. We talked a little bit about keg. So remember, once you open a keg, as long as you're displacing it with gas, you got about 100 days. Or excuse me, once it's open, you got 30 days. Is that right? No, once it's open, you got 100 days, and while it's still sealed, you have a year. So that's nice. So we're starting to bottle up some of our 19s for keg. We're going to put some of that rosé in keg. It's going to be absolutely delicious. Yes, Karen knows what's up. She's saying, love what you drink and drink what you love. You know that's what I say all the time. So if you have any questions I'm going to stay on for another about 5 minutes or so. And if you have any questions, any comments, whatever you want to say, get something off your chest. You're here with the community. We care about you. We love you. We want you to be safe. We want you to show care and genius and humanity to everyone around you, and to make sure that if and when you choose to show the general public, the media, or anyone else that you're pissed as hell and you're not going to take it anymore, you do it in a way that shows that you are a humanist and not a bedlamite. We are humanists, not bedlamites. Bedlam is going to do no one any good. But getting out and showing the world that there's more of us that are inclusive than more of them who are exclusive, that shows the world that we lead with our heart and our mind, to show the world that if you want to prejudge someone by something as ridiculous as the color of their skin or the place that they're from, then you do not know the ability to sit and make friends with anyone. One thing that I am convinced of is, as different as we feel, if we take the moment to actually realize and recognize the humanity in someone else, and we lead with kindness, and we lead with generosity, and we don't have to be weak. Kindness is strong. And that's what my parents taught me. I was very lucky that I was raised right, and I could get away with saying almost anything in my house. I could burn my hand and shout the F word at the top of my lungs, and my mom would come running. What's wrong? Because she knew I had a good vocabulary. If I was going to yell, oh, something was up, I'd probably burn my hand, right? They were incredibly careful to teach us after going through, the 60s as they did, and being educators and lawyers and interested in equality, that they would forgive a lot of things, but any type of attitude that was exclusive or racist would lead to an incredibly ugly situation within the family. Fortunately, because of those strong lessons, I feel like I never had to test those waters. And I don't understand why anyone needs to test those waters anyways. It's like we should be in a postmodern, post-racist world. Unfortunately, we're not. And now we just have to ask ourselves, what can we do tonight in our friends, a circle of friends, within our social media and within our neighborhoods, to decide how can we show our neighborhoods what side that rationality, reason, science, and humanity should end up on. And I think we all know what side that is. So take care of each other, show the world love, and let's make sure that as Americans, we come out looking like the lovers of freedom and the lovers of equality that we are. So I hope all of you have a wonderful evening. Drink a bunch of wine. I'll be back Wednesday. We're tasting some Chardonnay. Check the, I've basically lobotomized myself with Pinot Noir. I forget what I'm talking about Wednesday, but it's going to be a great show. I promise. And if you have any ideas for shows, let's talk about them. Put them in my notes, put them on my page. I'm always totally stoked to have some help in trying to put these things together. So really appreciate everyone watching tonight, and I really appreciate all of your kindness, and please do everything you can to make this world a better place. Cheers, everybody. Have a great night.
Well, hey Facebook, welcome. It's 4:45 on the 1st of June 2020. Part of the world's burning. We're all hanging out, hopefully having a drink and seeing what we can do about maybe forgetting a little bit just for an hour, just to see what we can do. The program is, my name is Wes Hagen. I am the winemaker for J.Wilkes Wines here in Santa Maria, California.